Sector Council released a report which predicted that the annual retirement rates for construction trade workers in Nova Scotia will increase, resulting in a total replacement need of more than 5,000 skilled workers over the next 10 years. As the economy of the province grows, so too will additional demand for skilled workers. Mr. Chair, Nova Scotia's skilled trades workforce will form the backbone of the province's economic growth over the coming years, and this is an area of tremendous employer demand. The active decision by a student to enter into the skilled trades as a career choice can result in a number of positive outcomes. The skilled trades span many differing skill sets, so work choices are many. Quality of life increases as good-paying jobs result in higher earning capacity. There is the respect that comes from productive work and the professionalism that is required of skilled tradespeople. Recognizing the importance of this option for our students, the Government of Nova Scotia committed to further expand choices for hands-on learning in the areas of vocational and composite programming. This new programming will offer students opportunities for trade-specific learning in high-demand areas such as metals, wood, plumbing, and pipe fitting and electrical work. The Skilled Trades suite of courses and the Skilled Trades Centre, a unique, specifically designed learning environment designed by educators, tradespeople, and members of industry, are the beginning of the integration of the skilled trades in Nova Scotia's public schools. Skilled Trades 10 engages students in an investigation of the skilled trades, the impact they have on society, and the opportunities that exist for those who pursue a livelihood by working as skilled tradespeople. In addition, Skilled Trades 10 offers students multiple opportunities to experience the rewards that come from hands-on learning. Construction Trades 11 continues to focus on the skills and knowledge developed in prerequisite Skilled Trades 10. It further defines these skills and knowledge in an authentic construction environment. Trades that are experienced by students include carpenter, construction electrician, floor covering installer, lather, painter and decorator, and plumber. In Trades 12, cooperative education courses, students will apply and extend their previous learning in on-the-job work placements. In 2010-11, my department will invest more than $937,000 to support skilled trades education courses. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to say that will allow us to begin a skills trade education program at Parkview Education Centre. We will also work with boards to identify additional sites with a view to expanding the program to 1 or 2 additional schools. As part of the preparation process for a career in the skilled trades, or for any career, workplace health and safety must be a consideration. Now, Mr. Chair, I'm sure you'll find these statistics as disturbing as I did, but in 2008 alone, 4,000 young workers were injured on the job in this province. 1,000 of those youth even lost time due to their injuries. These numbers are simply unacceptable. In an effort to better educate and prepare our young people for the realities of the workforce, my department, in partnership with Labour and Workforce Development and the Workers' Compensation Board, have teamed up to develop 8 hours of in-class instruction on workplace health and safety for grade 9 students. This workplace health and safety module will be a part of the Healthy Living 9 curriculum and will teach grade 9 students how to respect their work environment and arm them with the knowledge to prevent a workplace injury. Mr. Chair, the outcomes for this Healthy Living unit do not just teach students the difference between safe and on safe work, it also teaches them their workplace rights. It teaches and encourages students to question and evaluate their work environment, regardless of the nature of the work they are doing or who they are performing the work for. This module was piloted in 5 schools across the province during this academic year. The 5 teachers who participated in that pilot are coming together in May to discuss the module's benefits and ways to improve the unit before introduction into all grade 9 classrooms this fall. This module gives students the knowledge, power, and positive reinforcement they need to make competent decisions in the workplace from the minute they start their first job. It is my hope that these students will carry this knowledge with them throughout their careers as we work to create a more safety-conscious Nova Scotia. Mr. Chair, the students who complete these courses will have the knowledge and skills they need to make an informed decision about the next phase of their education or training. Mr. Chair, to support any decision, a wide variety of learning resources are needed. And that is why I'm proud that in the 2010-11 budget, the province has invested $8,332,000 in the credit allocation to ensure students and teachers have access to the learning resources they need. Authorized learning resources accessed through the credit allocation represent a breadth and depth that is necessary to engage the diverse population that we serve in Nova Scotia. Far beyond textbooks, the authorized learning resource inventory includes a wealth of print resources in both fiction and nonfiction, as well as hands-on manipulatives and software for productivity and student learning. These resources captivate students and support them in achieving outcomes across all subject area with interest and enthusiasm, equipping them well into the 21st century. Our strategy for the 21st century learning ensures that students develop the information and digital literacies required of citizens in an information age. Our strategy provides for the equitable access to current technology for learning, tailored teacher professional learning, technical support, digital curriculum, and high-quality curriculum software and learning experiences. In these endeavors, we are working very closely with our school board partners. Students graduating from Nova Scotia public schools must be well positioned as information age learners, employers, and employees. Indeed, Nova Scotia's capacity to flourish depends upon our success in this regard. Government is sustaining its $4,280,000 Information Economic Initiative investment. This funding supports boards in purchasing hardware, such as computers and LCD projectors and software, funding technicians to service computers, and providing technology mentors to lead professional development of teachers in the effective use of Information Economy Initiative to support teaching and learning. We know that further investment will be necessary to ensure that all our graduates have had access to learning experiences prerequisite to digital literacy. We will enhance opportunities for students to pursue high school credits through online learning, particularly for those students in small high schools with fewer than 300 students. Online learning provides a way for students to access high school credits regardless of their location within Nova Scotia. We will improve our capacity to create DVD and online professional development resources that specifically address Nova Scotia needs. Resources in digital and multimedia formats allow teachers to access an even wider range of professional learning experiences anytime and anywhere, instead of at the expense of teaching time in class. Such just-in-time professional resources meet the needs of dedicated and very busy teachers. Mr. Chair, because of the learning these experiences and resources provide, Nova Scotia students are among some of the best and brightest in the country. Now, like a proud grandmother, I like to brag about this fact as much as possible because it represents the dedication this province's students and educators have toward their learning. In about a month, Mr. Chair, I will be releasing my annual report to parents and guardians. This report will provide Nova Scotians with valuable information about student achievement and the state of public education in the province. As Nova Scotians read through this document, they will gain a better understanding of how schools use assessment results to plan instruction, set goals for improvement, and record the academic growth of their students. In past years, students have improved considerably. 2009 followed that trend. For example, students improved their listening and expository writing skills. 85% of the students also met reading outcomes. Mr. Chair, these results reflect the department's focus on explicit instruction in language arts and teacher commitment to ensuring quality literacy instruction for all students in the early years. Mr. Chair, this year, my report will focus on school improvement as an ongoing theme. Once Nova Scotians receive this report, I am sure they will be as proud as I am. My report will highlight our achievements, but it will also shine a light on areas that require attention. I won't say too much more on the report, but I do want to acknowledge that continued growth and improvement is a collective responsibility. I appreciate the ongoing role Nova Scotia's teachers, parents, and education partners play as we continue to take responsibility for our students' learning. It is also our responsibility, Mr. Chair, to provide safe, healthy, and appropriate learning environments for our children. The health and safety of students and staff is our highest priority. Through our Health Promoting Schools initiative, which is a partnership with the Department of Health Promotion and Protection, we are working to improve the health and well-being of our students, because students who are healthy are better able to learn. We have fully implemented our food and nutrition policy for Nova Scotia Public Schools, and I am happy to state that the majority of schools have made excellent progress towards meeting our policy objective. Mr. Chair, I'm also happy to note that the current budget we have provided an additional $400,000 to assist school boards to continuing to implement our Safe Schools policy. That commitment to health also extends to our school construction program. The Department of Education has an extensive construction and renovation plan for our schools. This year, we will spend $128.8 million upgrading and building schools. And to ensure students get to school in modern, safe transportation, we will buy 63 new buses at a cost of $5.6 million this year. We also have a duty to set a good example for all students and Nova Scotia families in the area of environmental stewardship. And we are doing that in a number of ways. Let me outline three. The buses we are buying will be fuel efficient and low in greenhouse gas emissions. Secondly, all 8 of our school boards are participating in a program to retrofit schools with more energy-efficient lighting. And thirdly, we design and build all our schools to the very strict leadership and energy and environmental design program standards, so they will use less energy and water. Those are just 3 examples, and we intend to continue to do our part to reduce climate change. Mr. Chair, I would also like to take a moment to say just a few words about our plan to begin implementing our much-anticipated student information system, which will have a significant positive impact on the public school system. A modern school system is a complex and data-hungry organism. Government has introduced significant changes in the past number of years that require the public school system to manage and track student data. School boards have been working with outdated, inconsistent, limited, and incompatible technology to manage that data. An education data system has been proposed for many years, but cost, budget priorities, and other factors have meant a delay. A modern, province-wide information management system is now needed more than ever in order for school boards to meet and demonstrate education program, service, and performance standards in relation to student achievement and school performance. We will be spending $4.5 million for this year on a province-wide student information system that will be invaluable for the day-to-day education of students through its ability to support teachers, inform families, and provide vital data to our educational professionals. We want this information to better shape educational programming for students. Mr. Chair, I would now like to talk about what is happening at the post-secondary front. The students of today and tomorrow will play a key role in keeping this province's workforce and economy strong, and government needs to do everything possible to expose Nova Scotians to the training options needed to take advantage of the viable career opportunities this province has to offer. One way to achieve that goal is to match employer demand with program availability. Nova Scotia Community College enrollments have been increasing steadily over the last number of years. And as more and more Nova Scotians recognize the value of a college education, enrollments will continue to increase. As part of this government's commitment to meet training and labour market needs, creating good jobs for Nova Scotians and growing the economy, we've invested $2 million from this year's budget to create an additional 250 seats in high-demand programs offered at Nova Scotia Community College campuses across the province. This investment will work to provide lifelong education, economic development, and community building, while ensuring Nova Scotia has the highly skilled workers needed to meet the demands of the growing labour market. In turn, these graduates will work to create growth and development in the province while filling high-demand jobs in need of talented individuals. This investment will create several new programs at the college, including mental health recovery and promotion at Burridge Campus, Yarmouth, the behavioral intervention at the Strait Area Campus in Port Hawkesbury, and the industrial engineering technology at the Centre for the Built Environment Waterfront Campus in my very own constituency in Dartmouth. The funding will also expand capacity in the Nova Scotia Community College's Schools of Access, Applied Arts and New Media, and Business. We know that 90% of Nova Scotia Community College graduates stay in Nova Scotia to build a life for themselves and their families. This investment will allow even more Nova Scotians to build a career here at home. The students who fill these seats today will fill the jobs of tomorrow And that is why our partnership with the Nova Scotia Community College is so valuable and why this investment is so vital. Mr. Chair, our province's post-secondary education opportunities are growing. Nova Scotia is proud to be Canada's university capital and home to 13 Nova Scotia Community College campuses and a number of private career colleges. Enrollments have increased over the past few years, and it is my sincere hope and expectation that they will continue to rise. Nova Scotia has a high percentage of students enrolled in college or university compared to the national average. But we cannot be complacent, and we must work hard to attract more students to our universities and college system. The message to post-secondary students is that government wants to make it easier for them to go to school. Post-secondary education is a key priority for our government. Mr. Chair, we are making good progress toward making university education more affordable for students. The average undergraduate tuition for Nova Scotia is down $181 from $5,877 to $5,696, a reduction of 3.1%. Nova Scotia was the only province to decrease undergraduate tuition fees and no longer has the highest average tuition in Canada. Ontario is now the highest, and Nova Scotia ranks second. In 2010-11, the Nova Scotia University Students' Bursary Trust Fund will reduce tuition for Nova Scotia University students by a total of $1,283 for each and every Nova Scotia student, an increased benefit of $261 from 2009-10. And for the first time in 2010-11, out-of-province students will receive a $261 bursary that reduces their tuition at Nova Scotia universities. The Nova Scotia University Student Bursary Trust Fund will serve to further reduce tuition fees for Nova Scotia students studying at Nova Scotia universities by $1,283 in 2010-11 and by $261 for out-of-province students. With these tuition reductions, it is anticipated that the province will achieve its commitment to bring tuition fees to the national average by 2010-11. In addition to our prepayment of the MOU to universities of $341 million in 2009-10, we will also be providing $60.6 million in assistance to universities, which will cover the balance of the knowledge infrastructure funding for the Nova Scotia Agriculture College, the Atlantic Vet College, and financial support for the Bachelor of Education programs at St. FX and Cape Breton University. Universities will see the final components of the Federal Knowledge Infrastructure Program, also known as KIP funding, totaling $38 million in 2010-11. As you know, we have launched a review of our higher education in this province to ensure an excellent post-secondary is as strong and as efficient as it possibly can be. In June, Dr. Tim O'Neill will complete a report and have recommendations for the development of a more integrated, effective, and sustainable higher education system in Nova Scotia. As part of the review, Dr. O'Neill is examining demographic trends, the rapidly changing demands of the workplace, and the financial situation facing post-secondary institutions in Nova Scotia. His findings will help to inform future agreements and funding arrangements between the province and the universities. This is an opportune time to take a fresh look at our post-secondary system, and I look forward to seeing Dr. O'Neill's recommendations. Mr. Chair, my portfolios also include libraries, which are a significant and much-loved community resource for lifelong learning and literacy. My government understands the vital role of public libraries in public spaces. Public libraries as public spaces. And that's why we are contributing $13 million to a new central library in Halifax Regional Municipality and $1.5 million to the new People's Place Library in Antigonish. The Department of Education recognizes the importance of keeping Nova Scotians connected to the world around them, and we continue to provide funding for internet connectivity in all public libraries. Our budget is providing an increase of $900,000, or a 6.8 increase for 10-11. We understand the importance of equitable library access, and so we are following up on the fall 2009 Nova Scotia Summit of Equitable Library Access, and we are investing in universal library access training of frontline library staff from all regional library boards this spring. This will help ensure that Nova Scotians with print disabilities understand that the public library belongs to them too. We continue to support collaborative library initiatives such as Libraries Nova Scotia, a collaboration of public, college, and university libraries working together to deliver a reciprocal borrowing service for Nova Scotia library users and continuing education for library staff across the province. So, Mr. Chair, let me conclude by saying that I am indeed honoured to lead a department overseeing such a varied array of learning opportunities. Whatever challenges we face now and into the future, we are well equipped because of the richness of our educational offerings and their accessibility to all Nova Scotians. Mr. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to share the highlights of the Department of Education's financial plan for the rest of the fiscal year and look forward to answering any questions my colleagues have. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for your opening remarks, and thank you, Dr. Ellen Lowe and Mr. Darrell Uden for accompanying the Minister here today. I have 3 children who are currently in the education system here in Nova Scotia. 2 are in post-secondary, and 1 is still in grade 7. And I must say that throughout their time in school, we've been blessed with terrific teachers, principals, and volunteers who've made a huge difference in the lives of our children. I have had some concerns over the years, though. For example, when our second daughter was in primary, it was when the former Halifax County Board moved to half-day primary, and we saw that have a real effect on our daughter. Our eldest daughter had finished primary reading chapter books. Our second daughter, who was born 3 months later in the year, so it wasn't like a big age gap, came out of primary and could not read. And it made me realize that handicapped her for a while until we got her extra help and she caught up. And it just seems to me that the decisions that we make in here can have massive impact on the lives of children. And it can, sometimes the kids catch up because we do something extra, or they just catch up naturally, and sometimes they don't. But I'm always really mindful of that when we're in here. And that, I think that's one of the things that has, for me, underlined the whole argument, the whole range of options around special education. I very much appreciated that the minister came back and decided to continue with the tuition support program. I have some concerns around capping it at 3 years with a possible fourth. For example, the day that the decision was announced, I was talking to one dad who was saying, well, geez, my daughter's going to finish grade 11, and that would be her 4th year. So that means that for grade 12, she's going to have to go to a new school. And I can tell you, as someone who moved to a new school in grade 12, that's not the most fun thing to do in the world. But I would think that if you have learning disabilities, it would be a very challenging thing to do in your final year of school. I have a number of, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking. I like to just get to questions. I have some concerns around post-secondary school loans. We discussed some of them the other day, and the graduate tax credit, but I think what I'll do is I'll just move on to the first questions, if you don't mind. The Nova Scotia School Boards Association said it needed, the various school boards needed a 3.6% increase to maintain services. Has your department assessed the repercussions of not providing that 3.6%? And if so, what are they?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Nova Scotia School Boards Association and some of the other education partners did have this Safe Grade 2 campaign. And it's interesting because several people asked me, well, are you really thinking about cutting grade 2? And I said, well, no. I said, I think the theme is meant to reflect that any cuts to public education are unthinkable, just as it would be unthinkable to cut out grade 2. And then the theme made a little more sense to them. And we certainly, in the department and as a government, appreciate both the support of those education partners and the focus that their campaign placed on public education. It created a lot of discussion out in the general public. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, as Nova Scotia grays and we have more and more older residents, there's a lot of concern that, you know, they want to see a lot of public investment in healthcare and other initiatives. So certainly I have to give credit to the education partners for the campaign, and that it created a lot of healthy dialogue about public education. And while you know, there may be a difference of opinion between the department officials and the authors of that report and the amount of money they feel that school boards needed. It's interesting because there's ongoing discussions about cost pressures for school boards between department officials and particularly the superintendents and chief financial officers with the various boards. So each other knows what's happening. There are no surprises. And within reason, I would say initially the budget supported the real cost pressures and the financial needs of those boards. I think what the boards are perhaps reacting to a little bit is the 1% efficiency reduction that all departments and all public services had to absorb this year, because we had to be seen not only to be taking a responsible attitude to where our revenues are coming from, but we had to ensure that we were belt tightening as well as a government. And because of the different way of, you know, there's a combination of municipal and provincial revenue that goes into the budgets of the school boards, the 1% general reduction, efficiency reduction, actually turned out to be a 0.7% reduction for the school board. So they weren't as impacted as some of the other, if I could call them sort of semi-publicly funded agencies and boards. But the day after the budget was announced in this chamber, senior officials of the department, including the Deputy Minister, who I want to recognize sitting up in the gallery, providing support today. Senior officials met with the top officials of the school boards, the board chairs, the superintendents, the chief financial officers. I had a chance to just drop in and speak briefly with them. And they went over the, what do they call the amounts? The profile sheets that each board received, and that gave the details of their funding in the different dedicated categories. And so there was some good discussion there. And so there'll be ongoing discussions over the next several months as the boards figure out, how they're going to adjust to perhaps getting a little less money than they had hoped for. But we are working very closely with them to ensure that there's little negative impact on students and teachers in the classroom. And, I think all of us realize that there are always some efficiencies that can be made, and we're hoping that's the level that that 0.7 reduction is going to hit. And it's interesting, when I traveled around last summer meeting with all the school boards in their various home administrative areas, we had a discussion about what might be coming. And I think by then I already knew that, revenues were going down for the province, and that to get us back to balance, we're going to have to spend and invest money very, very carefully. And I had a lot of frank discussions at that time with the various boards, and we talked about, thinking outside the box and doing things a little differently, working collaboratively, sharing resources and functions when we could. And I have to say, they were amazingly cooperative and interested. And, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but certainly there's a lot of goodwill and interest in trying to spend each dollar that we invest in public education as smartly as possible. And I want to thank educators and education partners around this province for taking that sort of proactive, optimistic attitude. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you. So I take from your answer that we don't know what the repercussions are going to be at each board level yet. It's still ongoing. They're still trying to figure things out.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Yes, that is correct. The boards are striking their budgets as we speak, and so for many of them, So for many of them, they're still having discussions in their various committees, and some of the boards are actually at the board level in terms of those discussions. But certainly over the next several months, more and more information will be known. And they, at this time of year, continue to make adjustments no matter how much money they receive as funding and revenue, because they have to react to shifts of population within schools and grade levels, and where their anticipated pressures are going to be in the fall. So it's very much that business as usual in terms of how they're dealing with it. Thank you.
The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
So at this point, we don't know if there are going to be teacher layoffs or anything like that?
The honourable Minister of Education.
No, just to speak generally, school boards are getting $20 million extra this year over last year. So that certainly gives them flexibility to deal with their current situations. And we anticipate, that retirements are going to cover any reductions caused by, for example, declining enrollment or migrations of people within their jurisdictions from, from one community to another. So, certainly there's additional money there for them to work. I agree, it's not what they had hoped for, but it's not as though they kept the same level or they received any reductions. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Of course, I'd imagine a good percentage of that 20 million will be going for salary increases that had been negotiated by the provincial government. On October 5th, 2009, during estimates, the minister stated in her opening remarks, this year's education budget also contains reductions compared to last year. We have had to defer spending for textbooks, CDs, and other learning materials for 1 year in order to save $5 million. We've also canceled some special education pilots for a savings of $924,000. Our literacy improvement program was cut by $1.4 million, leaving $1.4 million still in the program, and the class size cap for grade 4 was increased from a maximum of 28 students per class to a maximum of 30 for a saving of $440,000. What will happen to these initiatives this fiscal year? I'm sorry, there's sort of a list there.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, in the items that you listed, the first one was an actual 1-year deferment, and we have been successful in putting the $4 million back into textbook allocation. The rest, they haven't changed. They were reductions that were made, and they stand as they were in the presented in last year's budget.
The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
I should understand from your answer that textbooks where we spent $5 million previously, we're now down to $4 million, so that's a reduction of $1 million. And I'm sorry, I didn't understand your answer around the other programs when it says that things were cut by $924,000, $1.4 million. Are those cuts continuing on, or so that, for example, our literacy improvement program was cut by $1.4 million, leaving $1.4 million still in the program. So now is that program at $1.4 million, or is it back up to 2.8?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The textbook allocation and educational resources, it went from $8 million to $4 million last year, and it's back up to $8 million this year. The others that you listed have stayed at the base amount.
Thank you. The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
So you said it went from $8 million to $4 million, but what you said last year was that we saved $5 million, and I'm not really great at math, but 8 minus 4 is 4. So if you could just clarify. And I'm sorry if I'm being thick here, but I'm just not quite understanding what you mean by base amount. So when you say base amount, is our literacy improvement program $1.4 million now, or is it 2.8?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me deal with the textbook one first, and I think I have this correct. In the textbook allocation, it was reduced to $4 million, and this year from $8 million, and this year the $4 million has been added back, so it's back up to $8 million. But also within public schools budget to school boards, it was reduced by $1 million. Some of that, would have gone for textbooks and other educational resources, and $400,000 of that has been put back in of the $1 million cut last year. So it hit bottom, and now we're working our way back up again.
Thank you. The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
And so with our literacy improvement program that was cut by $1.4 million, leaving $1.4 million in the program, is it now back up to 2.8, or is that 1.4, or is it somewhere in between?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
It remains at 1.4. The boards knew last year that the textbook allocation, in fact, they were part of the discussions. They did not want to make these cuts, but they best know their systems, and that they were able to give some advice on where a one-year deferment could be made, and so that's what happened with the textbooks. And we really felt a responsibility to get that money back in because they'd been cooperative, in terms of delaying purchases. But they understood that the other reductions took them down to a new base, and that we would try to increase those as funding became available.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you. You said in October that you had canceled some special education pilots for a savings of $924,000. Have those been reinstituted, or I know that we said that you said in your remarks you weren't adding new programs in, but I wasn't sure if that would qualify as a new program or if it was a program from before, so it was just coming back.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've said a couple of times, those other items, those were more permanent reductions. The boards knew that at the time, and certainly we've made a commitment to increase them as funding allows and as the revenues of the province dictate.
Thank you. The Honourable Member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Sorry. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm sorry I didn't understand. And the grade 4, the cap in enrollment that was changed from 28 students per class to 30, is that still holding at 30 as well?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, that was that has not changed. The one commitment that the department made was to reinstate the $4 million for the textbook allocation, and that promise was kept.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we know how many individuals are employed at the board level across the province, and does the department have any say on how large a board can be, how many employees they can have?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We certainly can get those details. We don't have those numbers here with us today. In terms of dictating the numbers, those quite frankly are dictated by the number of students and their special needs and their distribution throughout the geographic areas covered by the school board. So no, we don't control. That's part of the local decision making that the boards are responsible for. In terms of some of the educational related professionals, we do provide information that indicates what the average ratio is of that particular function of professional to what certain number of students, and so they're aware of the ratios across the province, and the boards do try to keep within that same range. They understand that money spent on buildings and transportation and staff is not being spent, on direct programming necessarily, and so they balance all those factors and depending on sort of the unique circumstances that each of them has. So, for example, I was intrigued to find out with the Strait Regional School Board, their geographic area covers 20% of the province, and they have about 6% of the student population. So that creates really interesting challenges for that board. And it's not surprising that 97% of their students are bused to school. So you know, how they would arrange their numbers in certain categories would be very different from a board area where most of the students walk to school, for example. So we have to allow for that, those local situations and the local expertise. They're the best ones to make those decisions. Thank you.
The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. If we could get that information on the number, that would be terrific. Thank you very much. In the fall budget estimates, there was a plan to buy 63 new buses for a cost of $5.5 million. I'm just wondering, have those school buses been purchased? And are they those nice hybrid ones that we were, or the fuel-efficient ones we were talking about earlier?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we've ordered 63 buses. They cost approximately $82,000 each, and we're in an arrangement with the other maritime provinces, and so we get the advantage of a bulk purchase price, and they usually arrive in the spring. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Last year, there was $120 million targeted towards special needs supports, and that's the total for all boards. I'm wondering how much has been targeted for this year?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you. If you total the dedicated special education funding for all the boards for the coming year, it's about $127,134,100, and it includes the special education under the HOG funding formula is about almost $126 million. And then there's much smaller amounts for special initiatives like increased learning success. It's about $200,000. For autism, $200,000. And what's called the Innovation Challenge Fund is about $1 million. So that totals over $127 million towards special education. And you may be aware that that many of the boards actually provide additional money to what's provided through the provincial funding.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
During budget estimates in the fall, the minister said, "I don't think it would be a productive exercise to review the funding formula until we have put more money into it. Otherwise, some boards may be considerably negatively impacted by such changes." Has this position changed, and will you be looking at more funding going specifically to Halifax Regional School Board in the budget or future budgets?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I guess my short answer is no, my opinion hasn't changed. But the longer answer is that I respect the length of time spent in consulting and engaging school boards and education stakeholders in developing the HOG funding formula. And I'm sure no matter what board you talk to in this province, they would feel that perhaps they're not getting the full amount that they feel they need to best serve the young people in their communities. When I made that comment last fall, I was suggesting that if you have a certain pot of money and you open it up and you start rearranging how much you give to each board, obviously you're going to have to take from some boards in order to give more money to other boards. And that's certainly why I thought at that time, and still do, that until we have significant more money in that pool of funding, I don't think it's fair to to disrupt what's happening across this province just to rearrange the same pot. And, hopefully down the road as we get our revenues and expenditures closer in line or back to balance, as we're fond of saying, then perhaps we can look at significant investment, new investment in public education. At the time, there's certain cushions in the HOG funding formula that I think has well served some particularly rural areas of this province. There's a cushion there that prevents rapidly declining school population from taking a large amount of money out. There's a cushion that slows that down because we know that boards need time to react to those situations. And there's also some cushioning in there so that boards who have higher than average teacher and educator salaries are not penalized. And so there's extra help there to help those boards because we recognize that with some boards they have more experience, an older teaching force, and we don't feel that all that money should be pulled out of supports for students, for example. So there are some adjustments there that help boards over some of the rough pressure points that they have. If, for example, if you wanted to talk a little bit about the cushions for the rapidly declining enrollment, it triggers at 2%. So if your school population goes down by more than 2% that year, then you get some of this extra funding. And you might be interested to know, so for example, in the coming year, Annapolis Regional School Board will be getting over $1.2 million in supplemental funding. Cape Breton will be getting, that's built, just a second now, what is that, million?
It's 1.2 million.
Yeah, yeah, sorry. Cape Breton will be getting 9.1 million. Chignecto will be getting 1.5 million. The CSAP in Halifax, their enrollment has not triggered that yet, so they don't get any supplemental funding. Their decline is under 2%. South Shore gets almost 3 million. The Strait Board gets almost 5 million, and Tri-County gets 3.3 million. So that supplementary funding to help boards adapt to declining enrollment actually totals out over $23 million this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
So a school board that is experiencing significant decline but hasn't reached that 2% threshold gets no triggered funding. It's only if you're at 2% or more. Is that correct?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. Under 2% is probably, you can react to it in a reasonable length of time. If it's more, sorry, I'm losing my voice. So the 2% figure has been known from the beginning. It was part of the original HOG formula. So boards certainly know about it, and they often are worried, but when it's triggered for them and they get that funding, they're very pleased.
The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
I'd like to move on now to the action that's been taken to address the Nunn report. Since your time as minister, there's a number of recommendations, and I'm just wondering if, I could run through them if you would like, but I'm just wondering what you would have so far.
Maybe I could ask the honourable member to repeat the question, please. Okay. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
I'm just wondering what actions have been taken in your time as minister to address the recommendations from the Nunn report that dealt specifically with youth and education.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are several departments involved in implementing the recommendations of the Nunn report. Certainly, and I have to give credit to the former government in terms of the model of Schools Plus that was started in this province. It's an excellent model and one that my government would really like to both continue and develop and expand. And Schools Plus is a way for agencies connected both provincially and at the community level to work together and coordinate delivery of services to families and students in their community. And this, I think, has been probably the primary response from the Department of Education. We have 4 school boards with School Plus sites in Nova Scotia. They're the Halifax Regional School Board, and we've got Schools Plus at Nelson Winder, at Harbourview and Joseph Howe. And the Strait Regional School Board has Schools Plus at Chedabucto and Canso. And the South Shore School Board has Forest Heights. And Chignecto Central has Amherst High School, and the feeder schools are using that model. Certainly, my government committed $2 million to provide targeted support to help community schools. And while the details haven't been finalized, we're hoping that some of that may be a renewed investment in the School Plus program so we can expand it to other boards and other communities. It's very effective. It's a way to maximize the impact of available services and programs for families through in a coordinated way. And we're very, very excited about the potential of this and meeting many of the objectives of the Nunn Commission. I think one of the continuing themes in his recommendations has been that community agencies and government departments have to be working together to provide almost like a wraparound service for children and youth at risk. And we certainly see this model of service delivery as a very critical way of providing those much needed supports and services. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
If I'm looking at recommendation, specifically education initiatives from the Nunn report, recommendation number 31, the Department of Education should ensure that there is additional training for teachers and administrators on best practices in assisting students with attention deficit and other disorders, along with adequate funding for assessment and early intervention of students with these disorders in Nova Scotia schools. Can you address what steps have been taken to fulfill that recommendation?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can certainly provide many more details to you later on, but I think in a general sense I'd like to respond by saying that considerable professional development activity has happened with our teachers and support workers within schools. And the department, I believe within the last year or so, has actually hired learning disabilities specialist who is working directly with school boards and educators on many of these issues. I know there's a learning disability strategy that is currently underway, and a lot more resources have been provided to school boards and educators. As well, the school boards themselves have reacted very proactively on these issues, and there are a number of various initiatives going on, but I could certainly get more details on that. But we're satisfied that we're making progress, and that those students are much better served in the public school system now than they were previously. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
The last, phrase of that recommendation is, along with adequate funding for assessment and early intervention of students with these disorders in Nova Scotia schools. Has additional funding been allocated to deal with those two issues, assessment, early intervention? Has more funding been allocated for those issues during your time as minister?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll start my answer. Thank you. Over the last 10 years, there's been a steady increase in the amount of funding made available to the school boards for special education. I have to be frank and say that that increase has slowed down a little because of the fiscal reality of, but certainly there's been no cuts, and this is certainly a strong focus of the Department of Education as it is the school boards, and so we're trying to make sure that that we have the expertise and support available to teachers to have the most positive impact on these students, and you know, we can only hope to add more money to support the teachers. You're probably aware that as a result of the recommendations coming out of the tuition support, Dr. Alice Price from Calgary actually did research on best practices for learning disabilities across, well, internationally, and this information has been shared with the school boards, and we certainly plan to create what we're calling learning disability centers. These won't be physical centers, but it will be sort of a culture and supports for teachers and students within their local school boards. And so it will address some of our concerns around equity and access to specialized services. So we certainly plan to invest in that more and more down the road, but we want to make sure that all students from one end of the province to the other have access to the supports that they need in terms of both special education and including that subgroup of learning disabilities.
The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Do we have any idea about the timeline when this plan would be implemented? Because I'm hearing a lot of good work is underway, but I'm just sort of wondering when we're going to sort of see these things implemented. And I know that, you know, just from question period, you've been telling me, you know, a lot of things that you've been doing, but I'm just wondering, do we have any timelines on this?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was answering an earlier question about funding for special education, I mentioned several funds: Increasing Learning Success, the Autism Grant, and the Innovation Challenge Fund. And those are funds that boards can apply for funding from. They develop their own sort of locally, you know, made in their school board type of initiative based on the mix and priorities that they have in these areas, and they can apply to those funds to get funding for those initiatives. Also, there's you know, an ideal range of specialists working with children with special needs to, you know, the ratios, and certainly they have been decreasing, which means there's more support. So, for example, you know, speech language pathologists, school psychologists, and teacher assistants, and just having resource and learning centers available to teachers and schools. So those numbers are coming into a more acceptable range and providing more supports for the neighborhood schools within their local school board.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Recommendation 32 of the Nunn report says the Department of Education should consider additional funding of initiatives to develop and sustain programs and supports that encourage school attachment for students at risk, either within regular schools or in dedicated alternative programs. Without limiting this recommendation as particular examples, I recommend that 1, the department should consider the introduction of and targeted funding for junior high support teachers throughout the province. And his second recommendation, sub-recommendation was the department and Halifax Regional School Board should continue and expand their respective youth pathways and transitions programs. Could you update us on the status of that recommendation?
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Okay. School boards have responded to that recommendation in different ways. Some of them have tried to increase sort of the academic offerings to better engage students, and you'll remember during my opening comments the discussion about co-op placements and O2. I think part of the understanding of educators and parents that students learn best when they're fully engaged, you know, in their local school has led to that quadrupling of O2. And so we have, you know, 44 schools now offering that. Some of the boards have applied to those the grants that I listed earlier and are using that funding to meet some of the needs. Certainly more needs to be done at the junior high level. I don't think anyone would suggest otherwise. But for example, if you, the program that I mentioned earlier about increasing learning success, some of the objectives of that program out there is to get students engaged, to reduce dropout rates, to engage students, particularly students with special needs, so they receive appropriate programming and support, and to provide or improve practices and procedures to transition students from high school to post-secondary work and community living. And so boards are using some of that funding, that general funding, to do those initiatives. Is it enough? Of course not, but at least they're aware of the issue, and they're trying to use what resources and personnel they have to meet some of the more of the recommendations from the Nunn Commission inquiry.
The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
I'm wondering how much of that funding is actually going to junior highs, because just my experience with certain junior highs, there's not a lot for the kids there that if they don't enjoy school, if they're not a kid who sort of excels academically or is a motivated learner, there's not a whole lot going on there after school, before school. There's not a lot of clubs, things like that that might sort of, you know, grab a kid who's having trouble and make them want to be at school just so they can, you know, participate in the school play or whatever. I'm not seeing a whole lot of that at junior high, and that's just sort of, you know, a very simplistic level. That's not even a great, you know, a program that will really target kids. That's just sort of a general thing. I just see junior high is almost, to me, can be sort of a wasteland where it's sort of this never land or no man's land between, you know, your primary grades and then high school.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think you'd find an adult in the province of Nova Scotia who would disagree with you that we need to be doing more for youth at the junior high level. And I think that's why a number of different strategies have been tried in different communities. Everything from, increasing access to music programs, to starting clubs or getting youth engaged in other community organizations. Some school boards are looking at splitting those grades up, putting perhaps 6 to 7 and 8 together and then having grade 9s be the entry year into the secondary school system. In other communities, they're actually putting all the grades together, primary to grade 12. But there are different things happening with varied success. Again, more needs to be done. And the department has already had preliminary discussions with the education partners about doing a thorough review of the junior high years and the curriculum. And, I remember asking, they laughed at the time, but I didn't ask it to be funny, but had they ever thought of changing the start time, for secondary school? Because I know a lot of young people just find it very difficult to get up in the morning. And I thought, well, if they start at school at 10 or 10:30, perhaps more students would make first class. But I think we need to be looking at the research and in terms of what kind of brain and character and personality and development happens in those years, and just make sure that it's a good match for what we're doing and the methodology and approaches we're using for learning at that age level. So certainly it's a challenge, and everyone recognizes it, and I think there's a commitment to trying to do it better. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
I have to say I agree with you on the issue of getting teens up in the morning, although I think I must be the only mother of a 13-year-old who likes to get up at 6 a.m. But I'm sure that'll change any day now. Thank you. Thank you. Your previous remarks actually naturally lead into recommendation 30. The Department of Justice should build on the results of its report, Perspectives on Youth Crime in Nova Scotia, and continue its analysis of youth crime by comparing the province's existing interventions, programs, and services for children and youth at risk with the interventions, programs, and services that are known to be effective in preventing youth crime. The department should publicly report the findings of this gap analysis as a key part of the development of the province's strategy for children and youth at risk. Now, I know it's talking about the Department of Justice, but one of the you did reference that some boards are doing some things and some boards are doing other things. Is there a place where they get together and compare results? Are we going to have all the best practices coming together, or is it going to end up, sort of as a patchwork, and it depends on where you live, what services you're going to get? Because pilot projects are great, but if something is working in one place, you'd think you'd want to apply that elsewhere.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I could just briefly answer. Certainly those discussions are going on, but as I said, the review, I think, will cover a lot of the issues that you raised. Now, I'm not the Minister of Justice, but I am aware that a program that education is very supportive of is the Lighthouse program that's funded through the Justice Department. And I believe just a couple of months ago, the Justice Minister made an announcement about which community groups receive funding. And they're all groups that engage youth in the community in very productive, interesting, fun activities. And that kind of answers or goes back to your earlier question about, we need to be doing more in terms of keeping young people active and engaged in all kinds of things. So I know the Lighthouse program has put considerable funding into a number of those after-school and weekend activities around the province, and certainly education supports that. But yes, we need to bring together some of the partners who are interested in youth and make sure that we understand what each other's doing, that we better coordinate our efforts. And I think a lot of this will be the result not only of the review of junior high, but also an interest in a changed approach by my government to work more horizontally across departments, especially when dealing with certain age groups or issues that we have in common, and to better understand what each other's doing. And so, you know, we talked earlier about, interagency delivery of services in the school setting, and I think that's an approach that government itself needs to be looking at as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
And my apologies for reading a justice recommendation earlier. I didn't flip the page there, so I thought I was on recommendation 33 and I was on recommendation 30. The Department of Education, in consultation with the school boards, should identify effective measures aimed at enforcing the school attendance provisions of the Education Act and reducing the levels of truancy in Nova Scotia schools. And I believe, you know, we have a report, and your response will be coming out to that soon. So I'll just leave that one for now. Recommendation 34, the Department of Education, in conjunction with the province's strategy for children and youth at risk, should provide Nova Scotia schools with adequate space, staff, and programs for in-school alternatives to out-of-school suspensions as a disciplinary measure. And I do recall visiting, with one school superintendent who said, Newfoundland does not allow out-of-school suspensions. You're suspended, you're still going to school. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on that as a strategy, if that's something that you're even looking at this point, and whether you think that's effective.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, space is not a problem. And this also relates to the research and consultations that were done around absenteeism and student engagement. And I think part of the challenge that I've had as a minister, and certainly the department has had, is keeping students engaged so that they want to be in school and learn is a very complex situation. And I believe I've mentioned in this chamber during question period that there have been several very extensive studies done on this issue over the last several years. And it's been very difficult to reach conclusions that can be done in a very practical, immediate sense. And I think part of my challenge as Minister of Education is not only wanting to make things better, but to make sure that what we choose to do doesn't bring harm to some students. Excuse me. Because some of the generalizations about truancy and, having consequences. The situation changes for every child and every family. And a child might be missing school for some, emotional problem, or they may be a caregiver for younger children or a dying parent. And it's so hard to say, if you miss 20 classes, you're out of the program, because there's always exceptional situations. So we have to make sure that we're actually treating the root causes of these issues and not just trying to deal with the symptoms that arise. Now, you talk about the in-school suspension. Many of the boards are piloting those programs, and I've heard wonderful success stories. But again, it's the problem of trying to fund them in a sustainable way and expanding the program so that all schools can take advantage of it. We have some excellent work being done by educators across this province in trying to meet student needs, especially those who just aren't interested or are distracted or having emotional problems. And we want to make sure that we put our focus on resourcing what's working instead of spending too much time and money on, punishing people for what's not working. And to try to achieve that balance is a tough road at times. And I know that's one of the delays in coming out with the recommendations and the ministerial response to this particular study. But I agree with the honourable member. We need more proactive, supportive initiatives like the model that she's just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
I'm wondering if there's funding in this budget to address the issues that were raised in the absenteeism report. If there's a dedicated pot of money to deal with some of the issues that I assume, we'll have a response soon, and I'm assuming that will cost some money. Is there money set aside to make those recommendations happen?
The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, the budget includes the funding for a lot of the current initiatives. And actually, many of the recommendations, are really cost neutral. But some, I think it's fair to say, will mean expanding some of the best practices across all boards and all schools. And, again, it's, the same answers I gave with special education. We know that's a direction we need to go in. And as money it becomes available through the provincial budget, we'll make sure that it's used in the best possible way. And certainly keeping students in school, keeping them engaged, helping them to learn in the most, positive way possible is a goal of everyone in this province. And I've said many times, as with declining enrollment, we know that by 2020, we're going to have the same number of youth in Nova Scotia as we did in 1910. And so it's a responsibility of everyone, every parent, teacher, legislator, to make sure that the resources are in place so that they're the best educated, the healthiest, the happiest, the most productive generation of young people ever, not only for their own sakes, but for ours, because they're the ones who are going to be driving the economy. And, we can be selfish about this. You invest the money up front, and it's going to be well invested, and you're not going to have to spend it on the tail end in terms of dealing with the problems. I believe they say for every dollar invested in early learning and intervention, it saves something like $17 down the road. So, we want to use our money more smartly. Investing in children is a way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove has approximately a minute left.
I'd just like to say I think the minister and I have been sharing the same speechwriter, because I think I've heard that same message in slightly different words before. I'm just wondering, and I don't know if we'll get this in right now, but the IB program, what percentage of students who are actually registered in the IB program are graduating with the baccalaureate? How many are graduating with a certificate? What's the dropout rate?
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you raised that issue, because certainly the International Baccalaureate program is one that I think all Nova Scotians can be proud of. This year we're planning to spend $1.35 million on it. And in 2010, the graduating class would be 312 students. And not that this indicates anything, except I think the fact that they're bright and they're enthusiastic about learning, but certainly it's anticipated that they're going to earn $2.6 million in university scholarships, that class of 2010. In June of next year, we expect 352 IB students to be graduating. So, and next year, we also expect a total of 737 grade 11 and 12 students to register in the IB diploma program. So I'm not sure I've answered all your questions, but it's an expanding program. It's very popular, you know, where the students take it. And it's interesting, actually, last year, in 2009, our IB students outperformed other international baccalaureate students in North America and the rest of the world. So certainly they're benefiting from it and getting a lot of learning from the IB program. I met a couple of the students just recently, and I couldn't get over how enthusiastic they were about the amount of homework they had. I mean, they delighted in telling me how much studying they were doing every day and on the weekends. And they have a very good balance. I mean, they're athletic and they're involved in drama and music. They just, you know, are excellent young people, and it's wonderful. So often we hear about the few who are struggling, but really the majority of students in our public schools are doing extremely well and make us all proud. Thank you.
Thank you. The member's time from Bedford Birch Cove has expired on this round. The chair will now recognize the honourable member from Cumberland South. He has approximately 4 minutes left this evening. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I know we only have a few short moments here left with the minister. I want to thank the minister and her staff for being here today. I've just shared with her an email that I received from a constituent. I want you to know, Minister, that I actually have her permission to use her name and their child's name in the House tonight, and I wanted you to have a copy of the email, so maybe as I asked you this question, maybe between now and Monday, and I'll be back Monday, maybe we could share some more information with me if you would. Actually, the email is from Kim Crockett, and Kim has some real concerns around her child, Jarrett. He's 10, he's in grade 4 at the River Hibbert Elementary School. He was diagnosed with ODD, optional defiant disorder, and just recently with ADHD. Kim has two real concerns, Minister. One is around two concerns she shared with me, and she's asked that I raise with yourself. One is around the length of time to have children like Jarrett assessed. She tells me that he's on the list to be assessed, and he's been on the wait list now for about 2 years, and she's tried everything she can to move that a little faster for Jarrett's sake, and she hasn't had any luck to this point. So she's wanted you to be aware that there's concern out there. She also, when she went to his class to talk to her teacher in psychology, she found out there were small grade like this, there's 4 children just like Jarrett. So they're facing the same situation in regards to assessments. And then the second thing is that she's been told by the psychologist for the school that what's really needed in that community and that school is the BEST program, much like is offered at Spring Hill. And so her question to you would be, and my question to you, Minister, would be, what can Kim do in regards to having Jarrett assessed in a more timely fashion, and what can that school do in regards to the BEST program, making it available for those children in that community?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the honourable member for the question. This is a level of detail that I'm not familiar with, and to be honest, I feel uncomfortable discussing the specifics of a particular situation. I realize you have permission, but I'm not sure that I do. So I'd like to research this, and you know, we'd have to discuss with the board, because the board wait lists and you know, the access to various specialized programs varies, and there's no way that I or my department officials would be aware of the specifics of what might be available in a particular school. But I'm certainly willing to follow up with you and you know, see if there's anything we can do in terms of providing the relevant information to help this family. Believe me, I know from my previous experience as a teacher and a school board member. I was married to a teacher for 30 years, and 2 children went through the school system, and now have a grandson in the school system. And, you know, every family develops sort of humps along the way and stress points. And so I understand how stressful this must be for the parents and the young people involved. And, you know, certainly we'd like to alleviate some of that anxiety and make sure that they get the relevant services that they need. So I thank you for bringing it to my attention. We'll follow up with it and get back to you as soon as possible if there's any strategies or information we can provide. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Minister, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact you can't get into a personal situation. I understand that, but Kim wanted me to share the information with you. It would lead me to the bigger issue of what's available for funding this year in regards to those programs and assessments, and what this budget is actually doing for school boards around Nova Scotia in regards to making sure that these levels of assessments and programs are available. I know you won't have time to answer tonight. And again, I appreciate, because I think it represents some concerns that probably many parents around Nova Scotia are facing in regards to children who are afflicted with these type of disorders. So, but I would appreciate if some follow-up could be done in regards to what I may be able to share with Kim and her family, and in a bigger perspective of what we may be able to tell families in general around Nova Scotia in regards to this budget and what they can expect school boards to be able to do to address these issues. So I look forward to talking to you on Monday further about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Order, please. The time allotted for debate in Committee on Supply has now expired. The Chair will now recognize the Honourable Government Deputy House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the committee now rise and report progress and beg leave to sit again on a future day.
Is it agreed? Agreed. Motion carried. Order, please. The Committee on Supply reports.
Met and made progress and begs leave to sit again another day.
Carried. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That concludes government business for today, and I ask that we now rise and meet again on Monday between the hours of 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. And after daily routines, we'll ask to resolve into Committee of the Whole House on supply, and if time permits, public bills for second reading, Bill 1, 7, 13, 18, 19, 23, 24, 29, 33, 35, 36, and 38. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, so I ask that we now do rise.
Thank you. The motion before the House is for the House to now rise and meet again on Monday between the hours of 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. Is the House ready for the question? We are. The question has been called. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those against, motion carried. The House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Monday. Have a good weekend.